breaking news after the U.S. warned all day of a full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine, that it was imminent. Vladimir Putin has just addressed the Russian people.
The Russian President Vladimir Putin has launched a major military operation against Ukraine.
Of course, as war unfolds in Ukraine this morning, explosions and sirens heard in and around Kyiv overnight.
My name is Mr. Caravano.
Shannon Sobia.
James Becker.
I teach world history, 9th grade primarily.
I'm a history teacher at Pinelands, and I teach U.S. history and advanced placement European history.
Surveys of law, sociology, and world studies. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, like, you know, I talk about this, I brought this up in world studies, and I brought this up in sociology. We focus on things that hurt us, all right? It might be over there, but how are we being affected here? The products that we buy, all right? The amount of the price tag on those products that we have to buy now. Eventually, like I told you before, is that we're gonna have to sit down and we're gonna have to figure out, okay, this is bothering me now, all right? It's bothering the rest of the world, all right? I don't, you know, anything that has like that seed oil in it, it's gonna go up, especially at the stores. So if you are accustomed to making something that has that main ingredient as a main ingredient, all right, the price tag just went up on it. And again, too, you know, like Ukraine is also known for exporting oil and precious metals as well. So those things are going to go up. All right, so there's a lot of stuff that's you know, that we don't. It's out of our mind. But at the end of the day, you go to the store, it's going to smack you right in the face. And that's what I talked about in my sociology classes. What stuff that you guys go to the store to buy is actually being affected, you know. And I know that we're dealing with inflation, but there's you know, that added piece now that, hey, there's also scarcity, so now that's going to be driving the market even more. And that's because of the, you know, the Russian invasion in the Ukraine, because you just knocked out the #1 exporter of sunflower seeds, sun oil, and all that other stuff, main ingredient in a lot of cooking, food. So, and other things that we might not even know about.
Yes, I love talking about current events in our class. The unfortunate part is the lack of time, where obviously as teachers we're expected to get through the curriculum, and that is our primary goal. However, how can you avoid talking about a conflict such as you know, the Afghan-Soviet conflict, or in this case the war in Ukraine? How do you avoid that? The tough part for us is wanting to discuss that, but then balancing that out with how far do you go back. You know, we started this interview, we go back to 1991, but there's some historians that say that technically the relationship between Russia and Ukraine is hundreds of years old. So how far do you go back? At what point do you cut it off? At what point do you balance that out with needing to get through your own curriculum and do your own job? That's the tough part. So if, for me, our greatest enemy is time as history teachers, no pun intended, but you know, if we had more time, I wish we could cover more of these current events.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and not just with what's happening in Ukraine with Russia, but anything that's happening. You know, you've got to make sure that they understand that even if they're seeing the news, that they're seeing biased news now, and that they have to understand how to learn information from different sources in order to have a unbiased understanding of it. And that's a role in history. That's a role history teachers have always had. When Russia invaded the Ukraine, I had just started teaching about the Cold War, and it was important that they understood, well, what is NATO? NATO was in the news a lot, and they were talking about, you know, if Ukraine had joined NATO, what role the United States would have had to play, and students didn't know what that was. So it was up to me in that class to make sure they understood that, you know, that NATO is a treaty organization, and as part of that, you have an obligation to aid your fellow alliance, and that is that's why we need to know history. And I think history is overlooked in schools, and that's part of the reason why there's a lack of understanding of world events. So absolutely, I have an obligation to do that, for sure.